Welcome to the visionarywoman.com online media.
At the CIA as an undercover counterterrorism officer. So my whole life has been living and breathing foreign affairs and counterterrorism issues, and spending a great deal of my time in the Middle East, trying to learn, trying to understand myself. And I remain extremely passionate about this topic. And the reason why is because I really want to empower people to feel more confident about the issue of terrorism, because obviously we've faced an increased threat over the last, since the attacks in 2001, and even recently, it's kind of picked up again. And I don't want people to feel fear. I want them to feel empowered instead. Being able to say, look, we understand what's happening here. We accept that there is an increased threat to our society, but we're not going to let that bind us up. We're not going to let that change us as who we are as people, as human beings. We're going to say, okay, what can we do to make things safer and better for our country, while at the same time making sure that people understand that our values, they do not have to change as a result of making our country more secure. Does not mean that we lose who we are in the process. I get hired by the CIA, which I never envisioned doing. It's a huge surprise to me. It is. I kept thinking, when I walked into the halls of the great CIA, when are they going to figure out that they've hired the wrong person? Fraud, like, what am I doing here? What do I have to add? And I walked through the halls of the CIA, and I'm looking around me, and I am realizing that I do look a little bit unique, that the people in leadership positions tended to look very different than I did, tended to act very different than I did. And I spent probably the next 5 years of my career feeling like I was a fraud and belittling myself, saying, if I want to get ahead in this job, I need to be less friendly, less outgoing. I need to look more serious. Not that I ever am not serious, but I need to look more serious, appear more severe, more. I kept telling myself I needed to be a different person, because what I saw of the people getting ahead was so different from me. And then I had a turning point in my career, and this was when I was working in the war zone in Iraq, and a series of interesting projects I was involved with, I realized there was actually a really good intelligence officer. And it was the first time it dawned on me that not only was I not a fraud, I was actually really good at it. And do we women walk around thinking that because you look and act differently, that you must not know how to do that job well, and apologizing ultimately for who we are? And what I love to tell women is, actually, we have a lot of those really interesting qualities that would make a good intelligence officer, or that makes us really good to confront terrorism, or confront hatred, or confront instability. What I love to tell women is, you have this great God gift called intuition, and you have ability to kind of cut through all of the clutter and identify red flags, or see when something looks wrong. And honestly, I cannot believe how many articles I read every day of citizens who caught someone stealing, they caught the criminal in the act, or they saw the child that had been taken by the pedophile and was sitting in the back seat of a car. It's women just like you and me going about our daily business, because we're so tuned into our surroundings and have the courage to speak up, that have really helped recover abducted children, helped law enforcement identify who the criminal was. We women, we're like superstars, and we don't even know it most of the time. Fear versus empowerment. So you've crossed a threshold when you're then looking at the world out of a sense of something's about to happen in every second. But if you're walking through your normal daily routine and your antenna is up, it's good to have your antenna up, but you're operating from a sense of I will just simply be more aware of what's going on around me in my environment, versus I'm going to look and find something wrong here, that other people should not be able to make certain choices, that you're locked in to a certain choice. And so the way, if you're going to talk about, say, Islamic terrorism, that's based on certain things they find in the Quran or the Hadith, essentially they've been told their entire lives that people should have a choice. You either convert, or then we encourage you to convert. And they pick up the knife, or they pick up the gun because they think they're being obedient. But what I think is really important for those of us in every culture and every religion to say, look, religion is a choice. Your belief system is a choice. Everyone should have the freedom to choose their own belief system. And force can never change the heart. And the moments in which I should be more attuned to my surroundings. So for instance, when I was in Toys R Us with my niece walking down the aisle, I need to be cognizant. I'm with a child. I'm in a place where there's a lot of children. There could be issues here. Or in a family restaurant with lots of little kids, or the place at your daycare center. These are the places where you got to turn it on, and you got to be aware when you sense a red flag. And something as simple as walking down the aisle and passing this man who was squatted down by the Barbie dolls. I saw his eyes look at my niece, and I saw that disgusting look in his eyes, and I knew immediately that he was a pedophile, just by the fact that he was out of place and his behavior. These are not things you can ignore. None of us can ignore those things. So that's, certain situations you need to look for those things. So when you're in public places, like you're at a sporting event, or you're at a theater, or you're in a mall. So I look at alternative exits. I look for places I can hide, and it's, again, not out of paranoia, but I simply say, okay, just in case. And the things that I would look for in terms of behavior of other people is watching people in their bags. Somebody drops a bag on a sidewalk and walks away from it, you're going to want to clear that area. Test them. We have to put them through situations where we test their ability to use the things that I don't know if you've seen it on YouTube. There's a gentleman who is engaging with women and men and their children at the park. And he said, have you ever spoken to your child about not going with a stranger? And they're like, oh yes, 100%, most definitely. And then he said, well, would you mind if I did a little test here to see whether they would actually go with me? So he has a little puppy, and he's able to talk 8 out of 10 kids and following him to the other side of the park. And their parents are standing there like, what the heck just happened? A college-age son or daughter. You take them to campus and you walk them around. And you start with the place that they're living, and you say, here are the vulnerable points in the place that you're living. And here's the checklist that you need to do every night before you go to sleep. Make sure the windows are locked. Make sure that door is locked. And when do you open that door? And when do you let people into the dorm? Okay, here's where the car is parked. We're going to walk between your dorm and the parking lot, or your apartment and that parking space. And we're going to identify places where people could be hanging out. And this is what you need to look at if you're in the dark and you're walking by yourself. Here's the areas you need to be aware of. And you literally walk them through. And then here's another thing you could do. You could surprise them. You could show up, at some point on campus or at their apartment and say, were the windows locked? Were the doors locked? Were things left in a state? And if not, you sit down, you have another conversation with them.
TheVisionaryWoman.com. Watch our host of insightful video exchange interviews. Listen to the Visionary Woman Hotspot Talk Radio to empower your evenings, and read fascinating articles of inspiration and perseverance, all with you in mind. Visit us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.